the impact, talking about, hey, like, why does it matter? Why should I listen? And that's really the biggest advantage of these projects, these cross-functional projects, is really coming up with ones that matter. Just not just building to build something that matters. You may be asking yourself, oh, like, what does that look like? For instance, if you're in college right now, find something that people are having a lot of trouble with. It doesn't have to be thousands of people, it can be, but even 100 people, find something that people are having trouble with, and then find a way to build a solution, build a product that can help these people.
One, two, three, four.
Welcome to the Uncut Design podcast, where I speak with design leaders at Microsoft who are shaping the future of user experiences. In this series, we'll explore their unique approaches, lessons learned, and insights on driving impactful design in an ever-evolving industry. Today, my guest is Lennon Macharia. Lennon is a current senior at the University of Minnesota, majoring in both computer science and design. Lennon was a UX design intern at Microsoft this past summer, where he worked on the Microsoft Loop team. In our conversation, we talk about the journey to securing an internship at Microsoft, effective strategies for interview preparation, the overall day-to-day experience as a design intern, navigating team dynamics, key learnings and insights, and so much more. It was such a pleasure getting to intern alongside Lennon this summer. We actually met last summer when we were both design interns at Oracle, and it's been such a blessing to build a relationship where we can push one another to be the best version of ourselves. Lennon is easily the most skilled designer that I know personally. His commitment to continuous learning and his ability to craft meaningful, user-centered solutions is truly inspiring. I'm so excited to be sharing this conversation with you all, as it contains many valuable insights, especially for students and those seeking internships. With that, I bring you Lennon Macharia.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you. So for starters, would you just mind kind of talking through, kind of sharing like your origin story and what sparked your passion for design?
Yeah, so I'll give a quick intro about myself and kind of why I'm where I'm at right now. So, what's up, everyone? I'm Lennon Macharia. I go to the University of Minnesota, and I'm currently a senior. So it's my last year. It's so crazy how fast that happened. But here, I'll tell you I'll give you a brief overview of my origin story. So I was born in Kenya, which is a country in East Africa, and I lived there till I was 3 years old. And then I moved to a country called Botswana, which is right above South Africa, and I lived there for 9 years till I was about 12 and like 1 month off 13. And then I moved to Minnesota, where I've been kind of permanently. I moved with my family. And during that entire time, we traveled as a family to different countries around the continent of Africa. So I got to see different lifestyles, excuse me, different experience different foods, different people, and kind of that really grew my mind, really fed my kind of explorer mindset. And that is what has been the biggest asset for me when it comes to navigating the world of tech, since I have a much more diverse perspective about different people and everything I mentioned. And what got me into design was just my creativeness. When I was younger, I would take apart random gadgets around the house, whether it was remotes or toys. I would build random stuff. I would sketch, I would draw. My friends and I would build random hangout spots using old car, like car parts and like old couches and stuff. I was a very, very creative kid. I also really took an interest in tech because I used to watch a bunch of YouTube tech videos. My favorite being Marquez Brownlee. Been watching him for a decade now. And kind of that really grew my interest in both the creative side of just kind of life, as well as my interest in technology as a whole. And then kind of combining both of those, that kind of led me to where I'm at right now, just pursuing a career in UX design. And that's why Thomas and I have interned at two of some of the biggest, largest companies in the world. yeah, that's a kind of brief, longish intro of myself.
Yeah, I love that. It's so super relatable for sure. I think even for me, like picking apart random things and like it's so crazy when you think about as a little kid, like, these remotes or TVs are just like black boxes that just do what you want. And it's
Yeah,
like there's whole circuitry and all this like technology that goes into creating them. So it's super fascinating.
yeah, 100%.
What would you say is something about design that's clear to you, but you don't think is quite as clear to others?
Yeah, so I'd say that's a great question. One thing that's really helped me understand design very intimately is as a designer and as a product person, whether you're a product manager or like a researcher or a UX designer, software engineers too can really benefit from this mindset. No one cares what you think. And I'll elaborate on that. You're building, you're designing, you are iterating for other people, not yourself. And there's always this saying that is floated around the design community, you are not your user, but you'd be surprised how many people forget that when it comes to developing products. So always remember, no one cares what you think. You should only care about what the customer thinks. There's a caveat to that because what happens is sometimes people go on the other side of the curve and they blindly listen to everything that is given to them, every information that they receive, they blindly listen to. So I had to kind of start off my statement, that kind of little bit of a tangent, by saying no one cares what you think, so you can just remember that. But that doesn't mean you should blindly listen to people. You should really have a critical mind of thinking, but you should also be very, and I hate how people say this, but this is so true. You should be very customer driven because at the end of the day, money is given to companies by customers, not by you. So yeah, that's kind of something I've learned about design, really, really getting to the people aspect. Like that's the point. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Now the customers are writing your paychecks basically. So I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, that's a great response. Would you mind kind of sharing your journey to landing an internship at Microsoft and what were kind of some of the key steps and challenges in that process?
Yeah. So I've told this to a bunch of people that have asked me for advice about, oh, how do you get to the point where you're like the question you asked, like you're landing an internship with such a big company. It really comes down to a snowball effect. As hard as it can be for people that are later in their kind of college journeys or in their careers to hear, it really does start with a snowball effect. The conscious, intentional effort to do things that propel you year by year, month by month, week by week, day by day, minute by minute, hour by like those things over a long period of time um, really culminate into I'm doing all this stuff to then get me to this point. You should envision where you see yourself or have an idea of where you see yourself when you're first starting off. That's kind of the general jibby jab of how it is. Now, to actually get into the weeds of it, it took a lot of research as to what career I wanted, what type of lifestyle I wanted for myself, what skills I had that were applicable, what skills that I had that were marketable, a lot of research into the market as to, hey, where is the trend of the world going? And this was early on when I was freshman year of college. And then after having kind of a vision of where I wanted to be, backtracking and understanding, hey, I need to, for example, build these skills. So I need to take a bunch of courses. I need to grind, watch on all the amounts of YouTube, just learning how to do this stuff, take so many courses. And then once I gather those skills, I'm like, hey, now I have these skills I can market. I have these skills that are useful to these companies. Okay, how do I show this off? I can say I have these skills, but how do they know? Okay, build projects. start working in cross-functional teams because that's how a corporate environment is always going to be. You're not going to be working in a silo, and that's why projects with multiple people are always so useful. So that's the next step, building projects with the skills that you've attained. But then people kind of stop at, oh, I'm just going to build a project. And then you got to think to yourself, why are you building this project? What's so useful about it? How does this project relate to this company that I want to be or this role I want to have? Then once you've kind of thought about that, build projects that are similar to whatever niche you want to get yourself into. And while you're doing all of this, make sure that you're you're building a kind of pathway for yourself to get to that point. And how do you do that? Especially in kind of the career corporate world. It's a lot of networking, going to career fairs, messaging people on LinkedIn, having coffee chats, looking at your resume hundreds of times, moving every character, trying to be as efficient as possible with every single piece of space that you have on that resume. And even this kind of goes back to my first point of really fostering those skills so you can actually put them on your resume, fostering those projects, building those projects so you can put them on your resume. And then once you've done all this, you've networked, you've worked on your resume a lot, then once you start applying, you kind of start seeing your fruits, the fruits of your labor, excuse me. But this is all kind of I'm talking about this as a blueprint. This is what I did, but it can be kind of hard depending on the market conditions. But honestly, that blueprint really doesn't change, regardless of what market you're in. It doesn't change. It's networking, building your skills, building that pathway for yourself, and not only stopping there, but hey, I've got these skills. So I've got these skills. I've got these projects. My resume I'm building. I'm networking. I'm trying to build a pathway to myself for myself. You also have to understand, hey, I have to interview. So how do I get the skills to interview? So learn how to interview. Um, and that's a huge part. Once you've done kind of all these things on this hand, then once you get in interviews, the only thing that matters is, am I good enough with my interviewing skills? If you're not this, I'm not going to say it didn't matter, but the only thing stopping you from getting to these places is the interview itself. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much what I did. And with Microsoft, I can get a bit more specific. Microsoft was 5 interviews of recruiter screen, 3 one-on-ones, portfolio presentation. And really what they're trying to determine is, hey, is this person what they say they are in their resume? Can they talk the talk? Are they going to get stumped if I ask them a hard question? Are they going to lie? Are they going to try and make up information? Are they going to be honest? Are they going to be vulnerable with their projects, with their skills? Do they have projects that align with what we want? So then it really comes down back to, did I do all these things? Are the right here? Did I build the right skills? Did I build the right projects? Did I tailor my resume? And that's kind of how it is. That was really long-winded, but that's kind of what's going on in my mind. Very off raw thoughts.
Yeah, no, that was really valuable. I think you dropped some great points there. I think most notably, like you can't just be motivated by the end goal of like getting an internship, right? It has to come from a deep passion for your discipline, what you want to pursue. And it takes time, definitely like freshman year, even sometimes before college, really analyzing the landscape and the different areas you could go into. Like, for instance, I was super big on like AR, VR. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try to get into this AR design and actually saw like the steps required and the things that I have to learn. And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't my speed. And you kind of have to start actually analyzing what would be required. Um, and really just kind of become a continuous learner and enjoy that process of learning. I think, and building things like you mentioned and kind of emphasize the importance of cross-functional projects. So I think I just want to ask, like, what projects do you think or skills kind of helped you set you apart from other candidates during the application process?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to specifically Microsoft, I already had another big tech company on my resume, so that really helped. But even prior to that, and you know what, I'll kind of talk about both timelines at once. Getting my internship, my very first one, which was Oracle, and then Microsoft. The common denominator when it came to my interviews was I had projects that I worked. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be a finished project. It just has to be a project that matters. Why? And then that goes back to the why of like, why are you doing what you're doing? So every single time I would go into these interviews, I'd be able to talk about, hey, I'm working on this project with five other people and we pretty much have designated roles. And this project has a goal of doing this. It has the impact, talking about, hey, like, why does it matter? Why should I listen? And that's really the biggest advantage of these projects, these cross-functional projects, is really coming up with ones that matter, not just building something that just not just building to build something that matters. You may be asking yourself, oh, like what does that look like? For instance, if you're in college right now, find something that people are having a lot of trouble with. It doesn't have to be thousands of people, it can be, but even 100 people, find something that people are having trouble with and then find a way to build a solution, build a product that can help these people. So then if you're in interviews, if you have that project ongoing, or even if you finished it, you can point out and say, hey, I built this project to help this type of person with this type of thing, and I helped these amount of people, or my project is going to help these amount of people. And then being able to kind of really talk about, hey, how was I able to work with the people on my team on this project? How did that look like? What conflicts did we run into? What were some victories we had? What were some losses? Where did we pivot? Yeah, really talking about how you work with people is the biggest thing when it comes to these cross-functional projects. Because, like I said earlier, a lot of these companies, you're not going to be working in a silo. You're going to be working with multiple people. And what you'll find is that's really almost the majority of what you do, just talking to multiple people. And if whoever's interviewing you doesn't see those skills in you, that you're able to talk to people, have conflict resolution, really just work with people versus someone else who is, they're probably going to pick the other person. All skills remaining the same, all skills constant. And so that's really the biggest impact. That's really the biggest impact I've seen that has had in my interviews, because every time I've been able to talk about, hey, I'm working on this product with these amount of people on my team, these whatever, like software, like I have a few software engineers, product manager, blah 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 blah, and I'm working to solve this problem for this type of people, and it's gonna have this type of impact. And then the fifth thing is, hey, what does that process look like? What has it looked like? What have you learned? So kind of that's the answer to your question.
Yeah. No, and I feel like that you hit so much great points there. It's a super hard to do all that within just like the guideline, the 12-week course kind of project that you go through. Like a lot of this stuff has to be like personal projects that you're seeking out on your own time with, selecting, a few different people from cross-functional roles and really making sure that you guys have like a shared vision, shared passion towards solving this problem. And I think the big piece there is that companies want to see how can you come in to our company and start having an impact. And the only
Yeah.
way to really show that is you've had real world projects that have impacted X amount of users, right? So super important for sure.
Yeah. And that goes back to the first point. I mean, it kind of sounds really blunt and rude, but no one cares what you think. You're not, and I like what you said. The customers are the ones writing the paychecks, not you. And if companies can see that, then it's really easy to make a choice of, hey, I'm going to hire this person because this person has done that in the past. They've impacted these amount of people. And so that transition is not going to be as hard.
Yeah, I hit the nail on the head. I wanted to ask, how did you kind of prepare for your interview at Microsoft? And if you could share any like specific strategies or resources that were particularly helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. It really comes back to the snowball effect of I had done this before, so I had experience and I knew what these companies were looking for in my interviews. It really comes down to, and this is something my manager told me during my internship, and something I think would be really important for people to take away. Relationships in environments, as in the relationships, the friendships, the connections you build with the people you work with, are always going to be more important than the actual product. Products come and go. Relationships, connections can last lifetimes or a lifetime, excuse me, unless you're trying to live forever. Um, and so really what it comes down to is, can you show that in your interviews? Can you show you're a person that values connection, values working with other people? And when it comes down to preparing for interviews, it's really just a bunch of research of, hey, if I'm trying to interview at, for instance, Google, then you've got to do research on what is Google, why is Google, how is Google, all like the five, the five H's, yeah, it's understanding the company culture, the reasoning behind the company, how they interview. Once you understand that, then you can kind of start preparing for the interviews themselves. And really, the biggest thing that helps is mock interviews. Mock interviews are really, really beneficial. Getting someone on another call that's maybe in the same spot as you, or even at a higher spot as you, or a higher spot than you, and having them ask you the same similar questions that you'd be asked in a real interview, then really practicing and then looking back at, and I'd advise this for a lot of people, kind of recording these interviews, looking back at what you did wrong and what you did right, and also asking for blunt, radical, candid feedback from the person that you're interviewing with, you're doing these mock interviews with, really asking for that, like, hey, how do I improve? Hey, how could I have done this better? And then improving, iterating. Think about yourself like a product. Like you continually reiterate multiple times to then improve yourself and get to the point where things become second nature. Okay. And then this brings me to my second point, which is coming up with this. Once you've kind of got a rhythm of, hey, I've done the research on the company and I'm kind of doing mock interviews, coming up with frameworks that work for you. Frameworks really help you organize your thoughts and kind of your processes so you can answer similar questions in a similar manner. That means that you're able to then become more efficient in these interviews, more clear and concise with how you talk, and give the message that you want to give, convey that message to your interviewers, so that they know kind of where you're at and what you're thinking. So it really comes down to kind of what I mentioned, really doing a ton of research on the company. That's the first thing I do when I'm going to interview with a company. Do as much research as you possibly can. Know their products, know their mission, know their initiatives. Start mocking with people, really build a framework for yourself of how you're going to answer these questions. And also kind of going back to that second point, research how they interview, because a lot of this information is free online. And so kind of combining the first and second point, then you get to a point where you're just iterating, reiterating, and you can become confident in the interviews that you end up having. So it really comes down to a bunch of practice. It's like a lot of things in life are reps. Just how many reps can you do? How many reps can you constantly do? And then build up those muscles in whatever area you want to build them up in.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. Yeah, I think it's definitely practice makes perfect. And I think I really sucked at interviews like for a
Hmm.
while until like I just had so much behind me that like I knew what not to say, where I messed up, things that I sucked at, things I was good at. And mock interviews definitely helps identify a lot of that. I believe we did a mock interview before, when you're still doing your interviews with Microsoft. And I mean, I even learned a ton about like how I answer questions from that, just like asking you questions and sitting in. And I think we both got a lot better. So yeah, it's just practice makes perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. I also just want to say this. He's not paying me to say this, but Thomas is a very great person in general and also very willing to help because got his offer before I did. And so when I was in the interview loop, I was like, oh my gosh, Thomas, like I'm like worried I'm not gonna get this. Like I had all these rejections, like, oh my gosh. Like, and he helped me mock. And that was really helpful. Like I'm telling you, mocking with a person that is knowledgeable about what they're saying, what they're doing, as well as someone that's really has that helper mentality, that altruistic mentality goes farther than a lot of other things. And it just comes down to reps, like continually doing that. I think it wasn't only one mock. I think we did at least it was maybe three, and it was really
Yeah.
useful because you'd already gone through the loop. So I kind of had an idea of like, hey, you were a bit involved in my research because I asked you like, oh, what are they going to ask? And some of that is similar and is standard across like UX interviews, but some of it isn't. And you really helped me build kind of my mental in a way that allowed me to be successful. Anyway, yeah.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was a ton of fun walking together, honestly. Yeah, no, I'm super glad that we could both be at Microsoft at the same time. And yeah, let me know if you're ever trying to mock. I swear I've at this point have, I don't even know, like probably close to like 800 interviews or not interviews, applications, and like well over 100 interviews I've done, 200 probably. I feel like I'm a veteran at this point, but yeah. Uh, awesome. But yeah, could you kind of talk about like something that you wish you knew before you applied to Microsoft that you'd like to pass to future applicants?
Mm, something I wish I knew before I applied. Hmm. Okay, this one's really goofy, but I'll kind of get it out the way. Referrals don't work. So don't
Mhm.
even try referrals. I cold applied, but if you were like, oh my gosh, let me wait till I get a referral, don't. They like the referral system is broken. That's the first
Mhm.
thing. Okay, let's actually get to the meat of this. I'd say, man, really building, and I kind of had an understanding of this, and that's kind of what helped me with my previous interview experiences, but really building a personal story. Like, why should people care about Lean On or Thomas, and why that really comes down to that's really comes down to a lot of things. It's the one question, like why? Building a narrative that can convey why you're a fit for Microsoft and why Microsoft's a fit for you. And this doesn't only apply to UX roles or product design roles. This applies to product manager roles, even SWE roles. Because why, why should people care is really the biggest thing. So really building that narrative of, hey, if you're a person that used to do XYZ and has XYZ strength, utilize that, put that in your personal narrative, and vice versa. Like if you're a person that likes, for instance, someone that used to be a someone that used to be a college athlete, right? That's a really valuable experience that teaches you a lot. A lot of people think that if you have one experience, oh, like you're kind of stuck, you're siloed with that. But a lot of experiences and a lot of the things that you learn during those experiences transfer to all other facets of life. So really kind of coming up with your narrative, whether you're an athlete or whether you are a person that switched from a completely different field. So maybe got you went from bio to UX, or maybe you wanted to be a doctor and then you are suddenly wanting to be a product manager, how does your previous experience fit with your narrative? Give people the why, and those people will give you a chance.
Yeah. No, that was so perfectly said. Just to echo, yeah, referrals, they do not work at all. So please avoid them. And I've actually heard recruiters themselves say that they basically only work for full-time roles. Um, but yeah, I think you hit at a great point there when you said kind of like, why should people care about you, your personal story, who you are, your experience? And I often would ask myself, like, why do I deserve this opportunity at this company? Right. When there's endless choices for this company, it's like, why, what is my selling point? What is unique about me? And it goes back to that personal story, that brand, because you have stuff that's unique about you, right? You have passions, you have lived experiences, we all do. But you got to hone in on those and not just be another cookie cutter kind of generalist that's just, doesn't have like their unique kind of key factor that makes them them. And I think a lot of people fall into that mistake where they don't highlight those things that might seem like trivial to them or just, like it's kind of what I grew up with, but it's like very important things. That's why speaking with others, mock interviewing, it's very important because you can identify a lot of that.
Yeah. And just to re-echo that, especially now, let's talk about the current market. You'll have a role that comes out within an hour, there's 100 applicants. And that's on a good day. Sometimes it'll be over 100 applicants, right? By the end of the week, you're close to 1,000 applicants. If I want someone that can do the job, I'm pretty sure, okay, slice half of them, at least half of them can do the job. But I want someone that knows why they want to do the job, right? If I'm a company that is really passionate about producing products, building for people, I want the people I hire to know why they want to build for people. I want the people that I hire know why they're doing what they do. If they can't tell me that, why should I care?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a harsh pill to swallow, but you definitely you got to put yourself in their shoes, and I think that your mindset begins to shift, and you learn a lot when you start doing that. Um, can you describe a typical day for you as a design intern at Microsoft, and kind of how you interact with your team and manage tasks?
Yeah, so a typical day would look like, depending on whether I'm going in office or if I'm working remote, I'd say it's really useful. And I fall victim to not doing this, but it's really useful to keep the same routine. If you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not going into office today, I'm just gonna sleep in a bit extra. I'm not gonna immediately go up and take a shower, for example, or like go make breakfast. I'm just gonna wake up and start working. You're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, you can have a decently productive day, but if you keep a good routine, it really helps you in the long run. Typical day that really looks like waking up, looking at my emails, looking at Teams, looking at who's messaged me, thinking about the previous day's work, previous day's tasks. Usually at an internship, you're given a summative, cumulative project that you work on, that you're supposed to work on for 12 weeks. Sometimes you can finish early, sometimes you don't finish at all, but usually you're given that timeline and in one project. So really thinking about, hey, what is this project I'm working on? What do I need to do for the day? Do I need to, if I'm talking from the perspective of a UX design intern, do I need to iterate on this specific part of the user experience? Do I need to contact my manager or like talk to some cross-functional partners about something that I remembered, something that we didn't get to? Do I need to talk to some customers, perform some user research, some market research? It's really determining, hey, like what am I gonna do that day? But hey, I'll kind of take a step back, wake up, look at your emails, look at your team's messages, really set a plan for the day and start executing, making sure that throughout the day you're also taking breaks because you're not going to be able to 8 hours of straight productiveness is a myth. It's not possible. So really kind of time chunking your day so you can get bursts of productiveness and then taking breaks to reward yourself. And then it really ranges from kind of what I talked about before. It also comes down to a lot of meetings. People think, oh, you're a software engineer, you're a product manager, or I guess not product manager. Say you're a software engineer or designer. All I'm doing is I'm coding, or all I'm doing is I'm working on some mocks. You're wrong. You're not. It's meetings. Half your day is meetings. At least half your day is meetings. You think you can get away from them? No, it's meetings. So really kind of aligning with whoever you're working with or whatever project you're on, kind of looking at who are the cross-functional partners, what you have to talk about. Um, and yeah, like whether you and then setting aside some time, some focus time of like I'm going to design or I'm going to code for this amount of time so I can get actually get work done. But the kind of the theme of what I've been talking about this entire time is it comes down to people and working with people. So that's a really big part of a lot of corporate workers' days, a lot of interns' days is the meetings, and then kind of setting aside some focus time to get work done based on what you find out in those meetings.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can definitely plus one to all that. And yeah, there's a lot of meetings, way more than whatever you're imagining, like double that. And it's probably like around that much. But yeah, it is a lot. Awesome. Well, what would you say are the most valuable lessons you've learned during your internship and how have they kind of shaped your approach to design?
Yeah, I'd say one huge thing is really understanding. This goes back to what we just talked about. What are the requirements for what I'm working on? And who do I have to talk to meet those requirements, to meet those dependencies? Do I have to talk to Sally, who's a product manager on this other experience that's tangential to my experience? Do I have to talk to Nick, the software engineer who's working on a tandem team? Like, who do I need to talk to? What do I need from them? That's the first thing, really understanding. And even at the beginning of whatever you work on, what do I need to get done? What do the deliverables look like? That's the first thing you need to get out the way. Secondly, is really understanding, hey, what do I want my experience to have looked like? And what is my impact gonna look like at the end of it? A big thing of Microsoft is something that we call connects, which is basically quantifying your experience, or excuse me, is talking about your experience and detailing and writing about it and writing about the impact that your experience and what you've contributed has had. And I think those are kind of the biggest things I'd say.
Yeah, those are great points. Yeah, those connects are yeah super important.
Yeah.
What would you say are the key cultural aspects of Microsoft that you think every aspiring designer should know about?
Cultural aspects that every designer should know about of Microsoft. Yeah, it's very impact driven. Kind of going back to those connects. Every few months, you're talking about what you did and how that had an impact in the usability of products, in the impact on other people. That's a huge one. It's really emphasized on how did my work, how did what I did, how did that impact people in a good way? How did that help my teammates, or how did that help people that I'm building for, designing for? Those that's huge. And that's why you got to think about, hey, what is what I'm doing gonna look like for the people I'm building for, or for the goal I want to achieve. Really comes down to the why, the why, the why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Huge aspect of Microsoft. Other aspect is, I think culturally, there's been a shift of the importance that designers have on products. It used to be that designers didn't really have that much of an impact or say of products at Microsoft, but there's been a huge shift where they actually have a decent amount of say. Product managers have a lot of say, but designers really control the experience. And so culturally, I'd say the biggest thing people should know is product managers, designers work very closely in tandem, as well as software engineers really work closely in tandem with product managers and designers. So it's really understanding, hey, how do I build that cross-functional collaborative environment so I'm able to work with these different roles in an efficient way. And culturally, I mean, you could say that's the same for a lot of companies, but really there's a huge aspect of teamwork. Contributing to the success of others is what it's called. That's the biggest thing. How do I contribute to the success of others?
No, I definitely couldn't agree more. There's so much good, I think, positive pieces of Microsoft's culture. I think for me, definitely what sticks out, especially reflecting on the summer, is the emphasis they have on like learning it all, not knowing it all, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't know, it feels so cliche, maybe just because you hear it so much repeated so much times during the internship, but it's
Mm.
like probably the most true statement ever. Like nobody wants a know-it-all on their team, but they want someone who's going to take those risks and take the steps necessary to like learn from their mistakes, even if it's a failure. Reaching out to different people across teams, like you mentioned, lean on and really like leverage the resources you have. And yeah, you're going to fail sometimes. That's all right. But like just being obsessed with kind of learning new things and let that ultimately drive your curiosity.
100%. I don't, like, you're right. Like I heard it so many times it just slipped my mind. That's huge. Don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. Yeah,
Mhm.
100%, Thomas.
Uh, awesome. What would you say, or kind of in like what ways has Microsoft supported your professional development, and how can new interns take full advantage of those opportunities?
Yeah, dude, I'd say there's a huge cultural, and this really ties back to what you said and what you reminded me of. Huge emphasis on learning, continual learning. And this is outside of, hey, like I'm outside of school. It's like learning in the workplace. There's tons of workshops. There's tons of webinars, I guess is what they're called, of like, hey, we're gonna teach you this thing. We're gonna teach you how to be more productive with Copilot. We're gonna teach you how to be this, that, and the other, and really learning so you can improve your skills. I did such a huge emphasis on that. I'd say probably that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a lot of helpful resources and information out there for anyone who's interested in seeking it. So yeah, definitely like it's important to step outside your comfort zone, meet new people, attend different events and make the most of those 12 weeks for sure.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, how do you plan to leverage your internship experience for your future career in design?
Yeah. So intrinsically, just because Microsoft is one of the biggest tech companies in the world, that the experience that I've had during my internship has been so invaluable because I got to see software development, how products are made, how people worked with each other, the different cultural aspects of Microsoft during my internship. And I can leverage that to really understanding, hey, what do I want for myself in the future? And how have these experiences kind of fed the skills that I have and really opened up my eyes to the skills that I don't have. And outside of that, just having one of the biggest tech companies on your resume doesn't hurt. So it's when it comes down to interviewing with other places or even kind of considering to come back, because I know what it's like at Microsoft now. I have a better understanding of what I need to do. And so that's kind of really understanding, hey, you don't know what you don't know. And because now I kind of have an idea of knowing what I didn't know before my internship, I have a base kind of a reference point of what I want and what I don't want, the experiences I've had at Microsoft and kind of the value I have just having been an intern at Microsoft.
Yeah. Well, that experience, it's the most valuable thing for sure. I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people put a ton of emphasis on GPA, which like isn't bad in and of itself, but like the real gold is the experiences that you take and the work that you have to speak to that, the lessons learned. Um, but yeah, it's amazing. Well, we have a few minutes left. That kind of brings us to our lightning round. I have a few just rapid fire questions I'm going to shoot off. And yeah, feel free to take as much time as you'd like to answer each of them.
Mm.
But yeah, for starters, do you have a favorite book that you recommend others read?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one book that really helped me was Articulating Design Decisions I read a few years ago. Because something that you learn in design, and I'll probably give another book, but something that you learn in design is everyone, and I mean everyone, has an opinion about your design. Whether it's your neighbor, your coworker, your manager, someone's grandma, they'll have an opinion. So you really got to understand, hey, I designed this. It could be wrong, but in the chance that I know, and this usually will happen, I know why I designed it a certain way. How do I then try to convey that reason or those multiple reasons to people? What do I need to show them to at least give them the information they need to not immediately, or at least to kind of change their mind about the decision or the opinion they have of that design. So I'd say that's a really good book, Design of Everyday Things. And then customer driven product design, driven product development is also a good book that my manager gave to me, and I looked kind of skimmed through. Really talks about the whole customer design process, really building for the people that are gonna, as I'm gonna allude, gonna talk about, or we talked about earlier, the people that are writing your paychecks. How are you gonna build for them?
Mhm.
Really understanding that. So those are the two books.
Uh-huh. Well, they're great choices. Yeah, definitely. I think I read Articulating Design Decisions as well. It's such an amazing book. I think every early and career designer should definitely read that.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's a show or movie that you've fallen in love with recently?
A show or movie? Yeah, I haven't really been watching that many shows or movies. It's mostly been, shoot, it's mostly been podcasts.
Mm,
Mostly been podcasts. Let me think about a show or a movie that really comes to mind. Oh my gosh. I'll just give a podcast.
yeah.
I think that's easier for now. So podcasts I've been listening to for a while is Lenny's podcast. He's a product
Mm,
manager and he interviews tons of knowledgeable product leaders that have such valuable insights about how to build for people, how to build products that work, products that are successful.
mm. Do you have a favorite episode from Lenny's podcast?
Favorite episode. Ah, shoot. So there's this one dude, he really, wait, I forget his name. Actually, you know what? There's one episode I really liked. I believe
Mm,
he was like the VP of or director or something of engineering at Netflix. And something that
mm,
really stuck out to me, and I use every single, not every, a lot that I use a lot is kind of something that I took away is the phrase radical candor, which is one of Netflix's very core principles of, hey, be as honest as you can with everything that you say and you do. And I forget her name, but that's kind of like, that was something that was very memorable. There was another one with, man, like all of these have become a blur, but that one for sure. Yeah.
yeah. No, he has a ton of episodes, so it's definitely hard to keep track of him. But yeah, those are great ones.
Yeah.
What's a product that you've recently discovered that has really impressed you?
Yeah. Recently, I'll kind of go with the most recent one that I was really surprised about. And even though I'm not a coffee person, it's still really good to appreciate products. It's called an AeroPress or the AeroPress. It's basically a coffee maker, and it kind of simplifies coffee making to the core pieces of pushing water through coffee ground beans. And you can do it in this kind of cylindrical product that has a plunger type that you kind of pour water uh below or underneath, and then you squeeze water through, and you push water through a strainer, and at that strainer has a filter with coffee ground beans kind of towards the strainer and in between the strainer and the filter, and you just it's I explained that so terribly, but it makes coffee making really easy. Yeah. So that's something that I've looked at that's been really uh kind of intriguing to me.
Yeah, no, it's I've never heard of that product. Super interesting. So, what would you say is a great piece of advice that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean I've said this so many times, even said I've probably said this several times during this episode.
Mhm.
Why should people care? Why should people care? My first ever UX mentor, I remember he's so generous with his time. He would look at my resume, he'd look at my portfolio, and that's the question he would always ask me. Lean on, why should people care about this? Give people a reason to care about this. You can apply that saying to a lot of things, whether it's your resume, whether it's your work, whether it's the activities you do, or whether it's the type of person you are. Why should people care? Give people a reason to care.
Um, that's a great one-liner. Yeah, if you take anything away from this podcast, let it be why should people care? That's a good one. And last question is where can people find you if they want to reach out, connect, interact?
Yeah, so to whoever listens to this podcast, I'd say a good place to connect with me is LinkedIn. Uh, haven't been posting as much, but that's definitely a really cool place to connect with me. Also, my email, you could email me if you have any inquiries or if you have questions or whatever. Should just be my first and last name, lenonmacharia@gmail.com. And other than that, I'd say, yeah, kind of those two places. I'll really happy to reach out and talk to whoever reaches out to me.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoy you taking the time out of your, busy school week to chat today. So it means a lot, and this is a great episode. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I had fun, Thomas. Thanks for having me on. Really fun discussing all this stuff with you. And yeah, to whoever's listening, thank you for listening and tuning in.
Well, thank you, Leon.